All right, what's up guys? Quinn with 74 Weld, here with Erik. Today we're going to give kind of a deep dive into our Gen 2 portal, talk about all the changes that we've made, and I guess go through each of the stages and let you know some of the new features that we've got. So, I don't know, lead us off.
All right. Yeah, Gen 2, at the heart of Gen 2 is really standardization amongst platforms. And so I guess a little history on Gen 1 and how we ended up with all the different designs. We started with Jeep, and Jeep is very specific, solid axle front, solid axle rear, and but it's different from everything else that we've done. So we start with this one platform and basically, pass that design off onto, then we go into Tacoma, and now we're making a design for an upright, a brand new wheel speed sensor, different brakes. So as we go through all of these platforms, we're trying to integrate all of these different components in a way that may be suboptimal for those components based on designs that are baked in from the initial Jeep design. And so one thing that was suboptimal about that is we had a different portal box for every single platform. Yeah. And that was really a function of the wheel speed sensor. So we said we want to have
and the brake package.
And the brake package, yeah. So we said we want to have a Tacoma box, we want to have a Jeep box, we want to have a Bronco box. And then you end up with all of these different designs where we want to be able to use the same box on all four corners because we're already thinking about standardization. Yeah. But as we start expanding into all of these different platforms and, things just start to get a little out of control as far as being able to manage all of these different configurations.
Managing SKUs is a seriously daunting task.
Yeah. Yep. So we kind of took a lot of the feedback that we've gotten over the past 3 years of testing these things, and we started looking at what can we make better. And one thing that stood out was that instead of having a box for every platform, so 5 or 6 different boxes, what if we made 2 different boxes? One's a left, one's a right, essentially, and then...
Well, and we can't even call them a left and a right.
No, we can't.
Internally, we call them an A and a B because there might be an application where we use a left-hand box on the right-hand side, depending on a caliper configuration. I guess where we're going is we did all of these platforms and then we took a big step back.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to preface all of this with that so that you have the context as to why these things that might seem insignificant are actually really exciting to us. So.
Yeah, and I guess I should get to the point that matters to, well, some of you are here for all the nuanced, deep dive, technical data, etc. And then some of you are here just to figure out, oh wait, this is cheaper now.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a goal, and it's been a goal of ours, and we've said this in videos before, that we do want to bring the price down. It's just not at the cost of quality. So one of the things that we were able to do, which greatly allows us to streamline stuff, so instead of us having to make a different box, and I mean, if we go through the platforms right now, we have old gen Toyota, new gen Toyota, Ranger Raptor, Bronco. There are differences between all of the generations of like old gen Toyota. There's differences between 4Runner and Tacoma. On the new stuff, you've got Land Cruiser 250, GX 550, Tundra, Sequoia, Tacoma, the new 4Runner. All of those will have slight little variations. What we're now able to do, and what we're doing, I guess the big upgrade for Gen 2 for us, is one box across every platform. So now when we do production runs, we don't have to build 80 of this and 80 of that and 80 of that, different styles. We can just do 240 boxes, throw them in inventory, and bam, now we can, well, I'll let you get into the pre-building and all of that stuff. So it's streamlining our production process, which this kind of goes back to, you don't know what you don't know until you cross the bridge, and then you look back and you go, okay, I think we can improve that. But you can't improve something unless you first do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So kind of at the heart of what we did with this box has to do with the balance between an ABS sensor and brakes. And so initially what we were doing with a box per platform is we didn't want to have 4 different box part numbers times however many platforms. So we said it needs to be able to be used on all corners.
Yeah.
What that means is that on each side of this box, this side is probably the better one to look at. On each side of this box, you need to be able to bolt a brake bracket and accept a wheel speed sensor.
Yep.
So all of those features on this side and this side. What we did with this design is by splitting it up between a left and a right, A and B, now this side can be optimized for brakes and this side can be optimized for a wheel speed sensor. So what we have here is a little blank plate, but basically instead of pre-drilling for a vehicle-specific wheel speed sensor, we have this blank plate here that we then replace with an adapter that will space your wheel speed sensor to the proper location for the tone ring encoder inside of here. We also have the tone ring inside of every single unit bearing for a Jeep. So Jeep doesn't use that. You know, certain platforms we're actually plugging the wheel speed sensor into the upright or knuckle.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, one comment that I'll bring up here is that every single hole or protrusion into this box is sealed by an O-ring.
Yes.
We don't use RTV on anything. RTV is a terrible idea at the wheel. It will always leak. It'll always cause problems. If you are watching this and you ever want to service our stuff, please don't ever put RTV on it. We have specific part numbers for O-rings, for everything, and that seals it.
Yeah. So, yeah, we have an O-ring at every interface, 2 in certain places. So wheel speed sensor side and then brake side.
Yeah.
So you can see we have a brake hole pattern here and we have a brake hole pattern here. And the reason we did this has to do with the difference between front and rear brakes. So typically, what we're seeing on newer vehicles is, any vehicle, you're going to have a larger front brake caliper for the most part.
Yep.
But on the rears with electronic parking brakes, it's a smaller caliper, but if you're looking like, here's the width of the axle, it's going to be a wider caliper. And so what we're doing with our brake package is trying to push that caliper into the wheel as far as possible, which means that we make a shallower brake hat. So the brake rotor is going to live here instead of here. So what we were initially doing was making thin and thick brake brackets, and not really making the best use of material as possible. So now we have 2 different levels here. So we can have basically a standard brake bracket for a lower and upper level. Now design time is brought down because it's the same interface for every single brake bracket.
Yeah.
Now for brake upgrade packages, it's going to be the same across.
Well, this is a really cool feature, I think, so currently our older generation Tacoma stuff, or Toyota stuff, so whether that's, I'll just say Tacoma and 4Runner, we cover FJ Cruiser as well as a couple others, but for the older gen Toyota stuff, you're running the same rear Willwood caliper that Jeep has. Well, those used to be 2 entirely different part numbers in our system, and they started out as a massive chunk of aluminum, and we had to machine away 90% of it. Now we've not only eliminated, now we no longer have a Jeep specific and a Toyota specific, we just have a universal caliper mount for that caliper, 2 different rotor hats because Jeep is 8 lug, Toyota is 6 lug. But it allows us to start with a thinner piece of material. That part also went from a 5-axis part now to a 3-axis. It just is, it's less part numbers in our system, it's easier to produce, and our goal is then to pass this efficiency on to our customers.
Yeah.
You want to talk about metric versus standard?
Yeah, we moved everything to metric.
Yeah.
So we started out with standard. We were like, this is America. We're going to use American units in this shop.
Yeah.
And as we moved along, more and more things had to be metric because that's where the automotive industry is.
Yeah, and the automotive industry's been metric for a long time.
Yeah.
And I guess it always frustrated me a bit having to have two different sets of tools. And, if you take the equivalent between a metric or close equivalent, like a 3/8/16 is what we had. Now we're on an M10 by 1.5.
Yeah.
I don't know, as the engineer, if you know the strength difference between the two.
Yeah, not off the top of my head, but M10 is going to be stronger.
M10 is actually a significantly stronger bolt, and that's partly due to it has a larger core diameter to it. Whatever, metric is stronger.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is grab a metric set of Allen wrenches and put it next to an SAE set of Allen wrenches. You'd clearly rather carry the metric one on the trail than the standard one.
Yeah. And speaking of Allen wrenches, pretty much everything on these portals, except for your vehicle-specific parts bolting to the vehicle, are going to be Allen bits.
Yeah.
So,
and there's only a couple sizes that you really need to carry.
Yeah. So, and that'll be a new thing in our new instruction manual. There's one sheet, a universal tools list of everything you need to service these portals.
Yeah, I guess. So if we're talking about brakes and brake brackets, talk about the other change on that. Dowel pins and
dowel pins,
hardware.
Yeah, so we standard had a 3/8 bolted connection with 1/3/8 dowel pin.
Yep.
And the dowel pins, we were coming in radially into the box.
Yep.
So, and this was really a remnant of what we did on the race platform. So the race platform has a big pilot register that pilots into the portal box, and we wanted to keep a similar design initially, but that's a lot of machine work, a lot of stuff to qualify, so we went to a dowel pin instead. What we've done on this one is we've taken that radial mount dowel pin out, and now we have two axial mount dowel pins. So you're going to have a brake bracket. It's going to have two pins pressed into it. It'll locate right into the box. And then instead of 3 M10s, you're going to have 3 M12s.
Instead of 3/3/8.
3/3/8, yeah. So.
Yeah. And, hindsight on this, I guess we always had a universal box in our race application stuff.
Yeah.
And so that box, we had a semi-universal box. We have a 1.45 ratio or a 1.63 ratio, but that box really was designed to be universal.
Yeah.
But the problem, I guess the big difference is when you're integrating, so on all the race stuff, we just had 4 or 5 different brake packages that every racer would run.
Yeah.
The trophy trucks prefer Brembo and Alcon. Willwood was kind of predominant in Ultra 4. We've had some other oddball ones that thrown in there, but every single race caliper that we've ever encountered is all radial mount.
Yeah, and that's a lot easier to work with.
Super, it's just a better, it's a much easier package to work around.
Yeah. So OE brakes, it's typically going to be a cast adapter with a caliper on slide pins, and that cast adapter, it basically is going to look like this, and then we have to make it straddle our lower gear.
Yeah.
So that's why, on our initial boxes, we have all these cutouts. Every box has different cutouts specifically for different brake brackets.
Yep.
And then we're trying to overlay that on top of cutouts for specific wheel speed sensors.
Yeah. So taking a step back and looking at all of these and overlaying, we literally overlaid every single box and every caliper bracket that we've encountered and went, okay, can we standardize this stuff?
Yeah, and we even looked at, we had a couple other vehicles in the shop. We put them on the lift. We took measurements to see okay, looking forward, our foreseeable future platforms.
Yeah.
Let's try not to unload this and then, immediately have to change it.
Yeah.
So that would be bad.
Okay, so we covered most of the box stuff. Oh, I guess it is worth noting, gear sets are still the same.
Yep.
Bearing package is still the same. Unit bearings, you'll notice that we have machined a notch on either side. That is just so that we can get to the caliper bolts.
Yeah, exactly. We've always had cutouts for the unit bearing bolts on the 8-lug stuff.
We just changed the cutout slightly.
Yeah. And then as far as the box goes too, I mean, assembly is another big thing.
Yeah, talk about that.
Streamlines. So like this here would be a universal box assembly B. So that would typically be a left-hand passenger side box. The reason why we're calling it B is that your brake caliper location is mostly dependent on where your tie rod is. Most tie rods are going to be in front of your steering knuckle or upright. Gen 1 Tacoma flopped, so box B would actually be driver. So that's why we call it that. But this would be a prepped B side box. And to take this and turn it into a Jeep one, we take a Jeep knuckle and we go boom.
So
10 bolts.
from an assembly standpoint, what we end up doing now is we'll build out, you know, I don't know, what did Tanner build out, 100 of these things? So we get to pre-assemble all of this stuff, have 6-lug in one area, have 8-lug in another.
Yeah.
When we decide, okay, that's gonna be a Bronco or that's gonna be a Tacoma, it's the same everything. It's all pre-assembled. We grab an upright, we throw bearings in that upright, we throw it on 10 bolts, and now we're ready to go.
Yep.
So
like, here's a rear Jeep rear. Now it's a Jeep rear.
So, you know, all of these little incremental changes lead up to efficiency on our end, and our goal is to pass that forward.
Yep.
What else? Oh, they can't see it, but there's a hole in that.
Oh, there is a hole in
You want to go with that?
Yeah, I mean, well, you can see it on this guy.
Well, so.
There you
Dowel
go.
pins.
Yeah, you got it. So, we've got a hole here, a hole there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll notice that all of our uprights and backer plates and knuckles now have a hole here.
Yeah.
On this, that hole goes all the way through.
Yep.
And on the knuckle,
coming from the side over there.
so we've got a hole that dives in at an angle and then connects through here.
Yep.
This will be for central tire inflation systems.
Yeah.
So, no, you cannot run CTIS immediately. We like to do a lot of testing on this stuff before we release a system. But the reality is, if we don't drill these holes now, it's never going to get done. You're not going to take everything apart, send us back parts, us load them back on a machine, and then put CTIS, you know, air passages down the road. So we are prepping everything on Gen 2 to be CTIS compatible, and I mean, maybe end of year.
Yeah.
This is not something that we rush because central tire inflation system is a cool idea. And if something goes wrong, and let's say the airline leaks, you can pressurize the whole box, dump all your oil out of it, lose all the air out of your tire. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with CTIS if you don't do it right. So be patient, but if you're getting in on Gen 2 stuff, it will be CTIS compatible.
Yep.
The only thing that we would change out would be the axle shaft here, along with some air fittings and some air seals.
Yeah, and the hubcap.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, we've been testing it now for 6 months.
Yep.
But we want a lot more time on it. So, you know, a lot of people have asked for it. It is, at least the air passageways are in it as of now.
Yep.
And that's on everything from, you know, new generation Tundra, Sequoia, GX550, Ranger, Bronco. Everything will be drilled and prepped for CTIS. So we will have additional videos of updates that we've done on each individual specific platform, because we have made tweaks and changes, and actually some of them are like fairly dramatic.
Yep.
To older generation Toyota stuff, newer generation Toyota stuff, Ranger, Raptor, Bronco.
Yep. All that.
Yeah, that's all different. Jeep. Oh, and then we will shoot the video about the new Jeep stuff.
Yeah. Big stuff coming for Jeep.
Big stuff coming for Jeep. A badass package for Jeep that we'll be releasing shortly with Curry Enterprises. I don't know when this is going to air, but if you're at Easter Jeep Safari, go check out Casey Curry's Gladiator. He's on our new stuff that is not yet released, but will be shortly.
Yep.
And yeah, look at the front end of his Jeep. It's pretty cool. Questions on this stuff, comments, concerns? We're not concerned. If you have concerns, throw them in the comments, and we will answer your questions there. Until next time.
Sick.